Story 1. The Man in the Rain. The rain wasn't just falling that night, it was pounding. Like fists on the roof, it drummed hard and heavy, rattling the windows and soaking the earth until the trees bent low in surrender. Thunder cracked across the sky with enough force to make the ground vibrate. It was the kind of storm that felt angry, almost personal. And for Jeremy Collins, it would become the night he wished he had never stepped outside his house. He was 32, recently divorced, and had just moved into a small cabin in the hills of northern Pennsylvania. It was supposed to be a quiet retreat, a place to recover, reset, and spend some time alone. The cabin, tucked away behind miles of winding forest road, had no neighbors for at least a mile. To Jeremy, that isolation was a blessing, until the storm rolled in. That evening, the power had gone out around 7 p.m. The thunder was already grumbling by then, but the real chaos hadn't started. Jeremy lit a few candles and settled near the fireplace with a book, trying to ignore the heavy feeling that crept into the room along with the shadows. Something about the air felt thick, like it was pressing down on his lungs. By 9 p.m., the wind had started to howl. Trees scraped against the siding. Branches snapped like brittle bones. The candlelight flickered violently, as if reacting to something unseen. And then, in one long, unbroken flash of lightning, Jeremy saw something outside the front window. A man, standing in the downpour. Jeremy jumped to his feet, heart punching against his ribs. He rushed to the window and wiped the fog away with his palm, but the man was gone. Just an illusion, maybe? The lightning had played tricks on his eyes. That had to be it. He tried to shake it off. 10 minutes passed. Then came the knock. Soft, deliberate. Once, twice, 3 times. Jeremy froze. It wasn't a pounding demand. It wasn't someone in a panic. It was calm, purposeful, as if whoever was outside knew exactly what they were doing. He walked to the door, paused, and called out, "Who's there?" No answer. Another knock. Slower this time. He opened the curtain on the side window and peered out. Nothing but rain and blackness. Yet still the knock came again. His instincts screamed at him to stay away. But curiosity, or maybe a deeper, more irrational need to confront the unknown, won out. Jeremy opened the door. There was no one there, only the storm. He stepped onto the porch, rain immediately soaking through his clothes. He looked left, right, nothing. No footprints in the mud, no figures in the trees. Then he saw it. A man, standing at the edge of the woods about 30 feet away. Tall, motionless, face obscured by shadow. His clothes didn't seem to move with the wind, and the rain slid right off him like it was avoiding contact. Jeremy backed up and slammed the door shut. He locked it, then dragged a heavy chair in front of it, though he knew how useless that really was. He retreated to the living room, heart hammering. His phone had no signal, no landline, no power, just him and the storm. And then, footsteps, on the roof. Slow, pacing measured. He stared at the ceiling. No way. The roof was steep and slick. No one could be walking up there in this weather. Yet the footsteps continued. Step, step, step. They moved toward the back of the house. Then silence. A window shattered in the bedroom. Jeremy jumped. The sound of glass breaking pierced the air, followed by the thud of something heavy landing inside. He grabbed the fire poker and crept down the hall. His breath was shallow. The air now smelled wrong, like wet soil and rot. He reached the bedroom doorway and peered in. The window was blown in. Rain poured over the bed and floor. The room was empty, except for a single muddy handprint smeared across the mirror. It was upside down. Jeremy backed away. A whisper tickled his ear, though no one was behind him. "You let me in." He turned around, swinging the poker wildly into empty air. Then he saw the footprints, muddy bare, leading from the bedroom into the hallway and stopping at the basement door. He had never opened that door before. It had been locked when he moved in, and he hadn't bothered with it. The realtor had said it was just an old cellar, probably used for storage. But now it stood open. The stairs descended into blackness. From below, the whisper came again. "Come see." Jeremy should have run. Should have locked himself in his car and driven until the storm was nothing but a memory. But something stronger than fear pulled at him. Some deep, terrible curiosity. He stepped down the stairs, poker shaking in his grip. The basement was colder than the rest of the house and smelled like mildew and something metallic. He reached the bottom and turned his phone flashlight on. The beam cut through the dark and landed on a wall covered in writing. Dozens of sentences, carved into the stone with what looked like fingernails. All the same phrase, "Don't let him in," over and over, hundreds of times. Jeremy staggered back and saw a figure standing in the far corner, facing the wall. It looked like a man, but wrong. Too tall, limbs too long, skin too pale. His clothes hung loose, and his head was cocked at an unnatural angle. Jeremy whispered, "Who are you?" The figure turned slowly. Its face was hollow, not missing features, just nothing there, like it had never been finished. And then it began to move toward him, not running, gliding. Jeremy turned and bolted up the stairs, slamming the basement door shut behind him. He shoved the chair under the knob and backed away. The storm outside was now deafening. Lightning flashed every few seconds, illuminating the house in stark bursts. Jeremy stood in the center of the room, dripping, heart pounding. Then the lights came back on. The sudden brightness was almost blinding, and everything stopped. No footsteps, no whispers, no figure at the window, just silence and rain. Days later, a ranger found Jeremy's car in a ditch 3 miles from the cabin. The door was open, keys still in the ignition. Jeremy was never found. The cabin was sold a year later to a couple from New York. During a summer thunderstorm, the wife reported hearing knocks at the front door, but no one was there. She later told friends, "It felt like something was watching us, waiting to be let in." And on the basement wall, the carvings were still there, but now there was a new line added beneath them. If you are watching till now, don't forget to like this video, as next story is going to blow your mind. Story 2. The Lightning Collector. The night my cousin Malik disappeared, the storm had a name. Locals called it the Devil's Chain, a freak thunderstorm that moved like a living thing across rural Mississippi. My grandmother used to say it came once every few decades, always leaving something or someone behind. And on that night, in a forgotten town called Elridge Hollow, the Devil's Chain came roaring in, dragging with it the kind of horror no one could ever explain. Malik was 20, a photography major, obsessed with weather phenomena. He had driven down from Jackson to visit me for the weekend. Said he wanted to capture some lightning shots in the old fields where our grandparents used to farm. I remember the way he smiled when he pulled out that big camera, the lens longer than my forearm. "I'm chasing ghosts and gods," he joked. He didn't know how close he'd get to both. The storm started at sunset. Thick, black clouds rolled in like boiling tar. The temperature dropped 10 degrees in minutes. Malik, giddy with excitement, begged me to drive him to the hill, a long-abandoned knoll outside town with a perfect view of the sky in every direction. I didn't want to. I swear I didn't. There was something about the air. It felt metallic, like breathing in static. Even the birds had gone quiet. But Malik was relentless, and I didn't want to look like a coward. So we went. We reached the hilltop just as the first bolt of lightning cracked across the horizon. Malik set up his tripod, completely oblivious to the fact that we were the tallest thing in a 3-mile radius. I stayed in the truck, engine running, gripping the steering wheel as thunder shook the ground. He stood out there in a rain poncho, camera clicking in bursts, calling out every time a strike lit up the sky. And then, it changed. The storm didn't move. That's what I noticed first. It hung over the hill like it had settled in, anchoring itself directly above us. The lightning stopped streaking across the sky and began dropping straight down, over and over again, in the same exact spot, 20 feet from Malik. It wasn't natural. He turned to me, eyes wide with something between awe and terror. "It's hitting the same place, over and over." Then he ran toward it. I screamed for him to stop. I flung the truck door open, but the wind hit me like a wall. It was howling, almost wailing, like it had a voice of its own. Malik vanished into the tall grass. Another bolt slammed down, so bright it turned the world white. I ducked instinctively, and when I looked up, there was someone else standing where the lightning had struck. Not Malik. This figure was wrong. Slender, too tall, skin the color of old parchment, dressed in rags that moved without wind. I blinked. Gone. Malik didn't come back. I searched for an hour in the rain, calling his name until my throat burned. I found his camera, lens cracked, memory card melted into the slot. But no sign of him. No blood, no footprints. Nothing. The police searched for 3 days. They never found him. But that's not the end. Because 3 months later, I saw him again. It was another storm. Not as fierce as the Devil's Chain, but the lightning was strong, enough to rattle the windows of my second-floor apartment. I was home alone, pacing, thinking about him like I always did during storms. And then a flash lit up the sky, and for just a second, in the reflection of the TV screen, I saw Malik, standing behind me. I turned. He was gone. I didn't sleep that night. After that, the sightings became more frequent. Always during thunderstorms. Always in flashes, reflections, mirror glass, window panes. Sometimes I'd hear footsteps on my roof. Once, the static on the radio formed his voice, whispering, "It's not done with me." I started researching. I went deep into online forums, fringe weather databases, folklore pages that looked like they were built in the 90s and hadn't been updated in years. That's when I found her. Eliza Harrow, a storm historian, or so she called herself. She'd written about a phenomenon called atmospheric tethering, where a person becomes permanently connected to a particular storm system. The description made no sense to scientists, but folklorists had another name for it: the lightning collector. A spirit or force said to inhabit intense electrical storms, drawn to those who chase storms too closely, who try to record what should never be seen. Once it marks you, the lore says, you don't die, not exactly. You become something else. Something that travels with the storm. A part of the chain. It sounded insane. Until I saw the photo. On her site was a blurry image, dated 1982, taken in Texas during a freak thunderstorm. A figure stood in the middle of a field, arms outstretched, while bolts of lightning rained down around them. He looked just like Malik. I emailed Eliza. She agreed to speak. We met at a rest stop near the Louisiana border, neutral ground. She looked like someone who hadn't slept properly in years. Sunken eyes, weather-beaten skin, layers of scarves despite the heat. I told her Malik's story. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she said softly, "You need to stop watching the storms." "Why?" "Because he's watching you back." I laughed nervously. "You think my cousin's a ghost now?" "No," she said, and her voice was calm. "I think he's been absorbed, rewritten. And now the collector wants to add you next. It always comes for the ones left behind." She gave me one last warning before she left. If the storm returns and doesn't move for hours, run. Don't wait. Don't look. Don't listen. I tried to move on. I tried to forget. Until last week, when the Devil's Chain returned. It hit Elridge Hollow again, just like before. Same clouds. Same pattern. Same static in the air. I felt it in my chest the moment it came, like a fist squeezing my heart. I tried to leave town, but my car wouldn't start. My phone blacked out. Even the power went down. It wanted me, and I was alone. The storm parked itself over my neighborhood, and the lightning began dropping in exact intervals. Not random strikes. Timed. Patterned. Like Morse code. And then came the knocking. Not on the door, on the windows. All of them. At once. I moved through the house with a flashlight, heart thudding. Then I saw him. Malik. Soaked, barefoot, standing outside the glass patio door. His eyes were hollow sockets. His skin pulsed like a thundercloud. I screamed, fell backward, and scrambled for my bedroom. I slammed the door, locked it, and shoved my dresser in front of it. Thunder cracked above the house, so hard it shattered one of the upstairs windows. And then the lights came on. The TV turned on too. The screen showed static, and through it, Malik's face emerged. He wasn't screaming. He was smiling. And behind him, I saw the tall, slender figure from the hill, watching him like a puppet on a string. Then the screen went black. I passed out. When I woke up, the storm was gone. Sunlight streamed through the windows. The house was normal. Quiet. But I wasn't. I knew then it wasn't over. I'd been marked. And now I see them every time lightning strikes. Not just Malik. Others. Dozens of them. Faces in the clouds. Reflected in puddles. Screaming in silence. They're collecting us one storm at a time. So if you ever hear thunder that doesn't move for hours, if someone you lost shows up outside your window, don't open the door. Don't step outside. Don't try to capture it, because some storms don't want to be understood. They want to be fed.